Tony, I want to come to you because I think there's been a few pieces that have been mentioned here, specifically around point number 3, or C, that Greg still has on his slide up there, around privacy issues and IP, but linking back to the core component of AI, the data, right? I think, Tony, I was sexy a few years ago. I think you're becoming sexier right now from a security perspective. It's becoming much more highlighted, much more needed from a privacy perspective and a usage perspective as well, which then links to what Manisha is saying. How do we start categorizing from, let's call it, the high, the medium, and the low risk perspective? So, Tony, your thoughts specifically around broadly technology first and then the security element that comes into it.
Yeah, no, great. I mean, I think one key aspect that got mentioned is data. Right? Yeah. Data is the common denominator here that leads to the insights that we will be getting from AI. And with this comes a responsibility by nature that says, before we look at the technical responsibility, it's about what is our intent behind this data. You know, when I think about the concept, for example, of pulling data points from my Apple Watch, is the intention about making sure I can monitor and let you know before you know you're having a heart attack? Or am I using it for advertising to shoot your dopamine on particular aspects so that I get more profit? What is the intent? So there's an aspect of making sure that, you know, there is a responsibility from an organization perspective around what is it that you're looking to do with this information. And the regulatory aspect is there to guard and make sure there's consistency in the standard that gets adhered to. But with it also comes, do we have a maturity to do it? Do we have an operating model that allows us to be mature enough to do it the right way? You can have good intention. That doesn't mean that you're equipped to do it. And a good example would be when you think about the aspect, like you say, with cybersecurity, is that when you look at an open platform, is there is someone looking at the good, there's also someone in the background looking at how they can exploit this. So a good example of this, I've been running ransomware masterclasses with some clients in the financial sector. And I've partnered with a professor in New York who's actually been trained in Quantico. And, you know, together we've been working on some of the material, and we've seen that cyber criminals are now using AI to do the negotiations when they conduct the ransomware attack. So there's no human interaction. Because when there's human interaction, there's emotion. So what they're looking to do now is take the emotion out, and now you're dealing with an AI bot when it comes to now negotiating the Bitcoin. Another element is the increase in, as you all know, phishing, social engineering. And what's happening is they're using ChatGPT to make the phishing mails more imperative, because we've all been trained in Phishing 101, look for spelling mistakes, look for the following. But now if AI is going to make these more imperative and start using data scraping and use your social media information, we call this angular phishing, where they're now looking at your social media, your average Gen Z is on 7 to 8 platforms. So if I can scrape your personal data, I know where you've been on the weekend, like you say, the selfie generation. I'm able to use this information to further bring authenticity to the phishing ability. So that's the one extreme where we know the intent is for doing harm, and there's your ability that you may have good intent, but you may not be protecting your data properly. You may not be doing the right things. Now, yes, there's the NIST frameworks, there's ISO, there's all these great things we need to do. But I think we've got to be careful as organizations aren't jumping to this concept of knowledge as a service without asking the right questions. Are we equipped to be able to do it in a responsible manner and maintain that responsibly? And I think the EU has been leading a lot with the GDPR, the General Data Protection Act. I know the POPI follows in terms of a lot of the ethos behind that. And there's more coming out around the responsibility to digital platforms. What's their responsibility now for data aggregation when it comes to these things? So I think there's good intent around policy makers that are trying to make sure we're steering the intent in the right direction. But a lot of the times we are stuck with the how. So we can talk a lot about the why and the intention, but the how we do this. What is the handbook of here's the operating model for AI leadership, AI business as usual when you're doing this, because there could be repercussions of you not doing it right or sustainably.
Tony, you touched on the use of AI for negotiation of the Bitcoin, right? What about the use of AI on the good side for cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So if you look at now, OpenAI has done the plugin with Microsoft naturally for I think there's been a 70% upping and improvement on picking up phishing attempts. So yes, there's the aspect of using AI to look for certain trends analysis. We're seeing these applications that are able to scrape the dark web and look, for example, for your company's domain that's already on the dark web and you don't even know it because of a successful phishing 3 months ago. So there's huge aspects. And as we're seeing our ability to combat in cybersecurity, they're also using it themselves, for every lock that someone's looking to pick it, right? So I think that we are making big strides in the cybersecurity space when it comes to the use of AI. But in strategy, they're looking for the least path of resistance. And I go back to the people element is, I'll just fish you. And that's where I think on the topic of AI, we need to be talking about how do we increase dexterity in our people to be relevant? Because it's not about replacing you. It's where are you in the ecosystem to bring value in the use of AI to meet your business objective. So I don't think all organizations, for example, are going to need to create AI capability when I can outsource it. Just like we've got the cloud concept of hardware as a service, what's wrong with the concept of knowledge as a service? It's the born concept of IBM's Watson platform. It's the whole idea of knowledge as a service. Obviously now there's a contribution of data, which means do I have the data? Do I have the taxonomy? Do I have a level of maturity or let's say the standard to be able to contribute to the model? So there has to be an aspect of how do I make myself relevant? But if we can't play at a certain level when it comes to our own dexterity, then we will be left behind. So I go back to that people aspect. How do we bring that in as part of our operating model?